Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Order of Battle Endsieg, the final DLC pack as part of the Krieg series of DLCs in Order of Battle World War II, a game that is published by Matrix and Slytherin Games and is made by the Aristocrats. This is the second battle in the Endsieg campaign. It is a 16-battle campaign, which looks at the campaigns starting in the summer of 1943 and through to the conclusion of the Second World War. Notably, it does avoid the battles of Berlin because it does assume the campaign will go positively for you, the player, as you play as the Germans. It's a German point of view campaign. It does allow you to bring units forward, so if you're a owner of Panzerkrieg and before that Blitzkrieg, you can carry your core units from Blitzkrieg to Panzerkrieg and Panzerkrieg through to Endsieg if you like. Additionally, if you have the North Africa DLC pack for Order of Battle World War II called Sandstorm, you can bring those troops forward into this as well. So it's sort of a progression of these various DLC packs. The first one, Blitzkrieg, looked at the war in the early part of the war where things were going well for Germany, you know, the invasions of Poland, of France. The second DLC pack, Panzerkrieg, looked at things as the tide was beginning to turn, so the Soviet 1942 winter counteroffensive or the Battle of Stalingrad, and this one looks at things after the Battle of Kursk and once the tide sort of has irrevocably abandoned Germany and put the Soviets in the driver's seat. Now, this battle is the second battle in the campaign. The first one I did win as a victory. It was the Battle of the Donbass. This one I can't pronounce the name. It's like UOP, like Ruzinovsky or something like that. The city of Kharkov, or Kharkov, however you pronounce that, is one of the Soviet objectives in this. So this is the counteroffensive after the Battle of Kursk. The Russians have regained the momentum and are trying to drive the Germans back, as the Germans were obviously trying to stop that. Now, in this particular video, we're about 30 minutes into the actual fight. We're still pretty early on. We're only in our second turn of the game. It's an 18-turn battle. There are 2 or 3 cities that we have to hold in order to win this fight, and then there are 7 secondary objectives which we want to hold in order to win a major victory. So there are sort of these primary objectives and these secondary objectives. The primaries are just to hold kind of the major few cities. The secondaries are to hold all sort of the secondary importance cities, as well as destroying at least 4 Soviet air units. I'm not sure what the perk of destroying at least 4 Soviet air units are, but there will be some kind of benefit, you know, presumably in a follow-on battle to do that. I'll give you the example of the Battle of the Donbass. One of the secondary objectives is to destroy at least 10 Soviet tanks. We did that, and now, supposedly anyway, the Soviet armor is going to be more green, less effective in this battle, and I think any of the other remaining battles in 1943, it's sort of simulating heavy casualties, so presumably shooting down 4 Soviet aircraft will have a similar impact. As you can see here, the battle is unfolding. We're in the process of counterattacking. I think in this game, one of the best strategies is to be aggressive and to counterattack the enemy, so you can sit back and wait for them to attack you, but it does seem like the game generally gives the benefit to the attacker. There's a few exceptions. Infantry in woodlands can be very effective in the defense. Infantry in cities can be very effective on the defense. But in general, I feel like if I'm counterattacking, I'm maintaining the momentum, and I'm going to do a better job of driving the Soviets and having success. Now, my main defense in this battle is kind of in the center of the map. That's where the bulk of my units are. You can see right there, we're looking at that formation right now. I've got like 3 Panzer IV units over here. I've got an anti-tank self-propelled gun. I've got 2 artillery batteries. I've got 2 Tiger units. All of my SS troops are in the center there. So really, it's the bulk of my strength in the center. And the reason is the game in the briefing mentioned that this would be where the strongest Soviet formations would be located. And so I'm trying to go strength on strength. The Tiger in this game is a very formidable weapon that the Soviets have trouble countering. And so my objective is obviously to leverage that sort of 2-unit strength of those Tigers to drive back the Soviet armor here. You can see there's 2 Soviet tanks here, and then there's a Katyusha rocket unit just to the right side of the screen. I've already destroyed 1 Soviet armor unit over here. I've badly weakened several infantry units, and I'm having quite a bit of success. I've also additionally already shot down 1 enemy aircraft, so we're trying to counter these enemy units as they launch these counteroffensives. I haven't really reinforced my troops on the far right flank of the map here. There's actually quite a few more Soviet troops here than I thought there were going to be, and you can see there they just pushed back some of my self-propelled units as well, and they're almost making a little pocket over here for a couple of infantry, or an infantry unit and an armored unit over there. So I'm going to have to be mindful of that and make sure that they don't overwhelm me. Meanwhile, the game does do a good job of representing the masses of Soviet artillery, sort of the Soviet doctrine that involved using large numbers of artillery, including rocket artillery. Rocket artillery doesn't seem to do a lot of damage, but it sure does suppress your troops and make them vulnerable to follow-on enemy attacks. Meanwhile, you can see here we're on the defensive on this bridge. We've cut off a Russian armored unit here on the far left side of the map, and they were attacking to try and sort of link those troops back up with their supply lines. That little red dot means the unit's out of supply. Still, they were able to finish off a very weak infantry unit there and destroy that. And then another one of their armor units advances around my infantry on this bridge and manages to cut them off. So those troops are now surrounded. The surrounded mechanic, however, doesn't kick in immediately, so even though those troops are surrounded, they maintain their supply for the remainder of this turn. When it's our next turn, or my next turn to move, those troops will be deemed out of supply at that time. But it doesn't really matter because they're dead anyway. The Soviets just finished them off there. So I've kind of got crises brewing in this battle. On the far right flank and on the far left flank, the Soviets are slowly but surely overwhelming the troops that I have to deploy there. In the center is where we're doing best, and that's also where the Soviets are strongest. But that does open me up to being encircled, potentially. The major objectives are are on both the left flank and in the center, but a little bit into the rear. The problem is if I maintain this forward defensive, the troops breaking through on the right actually have a direct road straight to Krakow, which is I'm so bad. It's Kharkov? I think it's Kharkov. I keep wanting to say Krakow, and I think I'm getting it confused with Krakow, the Polish city, which is also generally in these types of games one of the major objectives of the German Blitzkrieg of Poland. But Kharkov, I believe, is how you pronounce the Russian city. That is the Soviet objective here in the center, toward the south of the map. This map does a good job of having a wide front, but again, because there's so many Soviet units, it almost feels a little bit like World War I as they kind of just keep pressing forward. And this Soviet turn never seems to end. That's the other, I don't know if complaint's the right word, but that's the other thing that I kind of feel like, all right, you know, I've been talking for 8 minutes now. About 6 of those have been as this turn has been unfolding. And I get that the Soviets have masses and overwhelming manpower, but sure would be nice to be able to talk about what I'm doing. Okay, so we're into turn number 2, our version of turn 2. Sorry, actually turn 3. So the Soviets have really started to threaten us on the right flank. In the center, things are going a little bit better. I'm basically trying to just get to the 4 air units shot down, so I'm kind of focusing my fighters and my anti-aircraft to try and gang up on lone Russian aircraft. So we just shot down another one there that was a Russian bombing group. And then I'm also just trying to inflict as many casualties as possible on the Russians here in the center. I'm not really trying to drive toward any particular objective. I think we've actually pushed the front line back here a bit. But I'm not actually trying to get anywhere in specific. My main goal here is to destroy enough Russian troops in the center here that I can pull some of these troops and swing them to the right or the left as necessary and reinforce those troops. So my main objective is here, maybe destroy 3 of these units, maybe 4 units here that you can see here, so that there's no real threat from this section of the map, and then we can go ahead and sort of mop up, leave a few troops in the center, and then we can swing the bulk of the remaining troops here to the right flank. So that's really my objective here. You can see I'm attacking multiple units, inflicting heavy casualties. The Russian troops are falling back rather than being destroyed, and you know, that's kind of the situation. I'm trying to knock those guys with artillery. The one challenge with that strategy of damaging them enough so that they can't pose much of a threat and we can kind of reduce our force here is that it does really feel like in this game that units are incredibly difficult to destroy, and if I just, pull my troops out and move them somewhere else, then they're going to reinforce very quickly. The Soviets have large numbers of manpower and reserves to draw from, again represented by the reality of their 1943 offensive. So even though I'm, crippling these units, if I just totally backed off here and went totally on the defensive, all these units here that are weakened would probably be fully reinforced in 2 to 3 turns. That would be my guess. So, maintaining pressure in the center, and maybe we can swing right with some of these troops, these Tigers that are kind of starting to break through here in the center. Swing right to try and alleviate this right flank a bit. Additionally, these troops that are kind of about to be cut off here, mainly I'm just going to try and make sure we keep their supply open as long as possible, and again, likewise, try and damage or destroy as many of these Russian infantry units on the right flank as possible. I'm also trying to guard Kharkov, we've got a couple of units between them, and you can see Kharkov back here. We don't have a lot of units between them and the city, but it is one of those major objectives that we can lose it, but we have to end the battle maintaining our hold. So really it's all about trying to keep the Russians back off that town and weaken them enough so that we can kind of parcel around our troops. It's very much going to be a war of attrition here. But I'm okay. I mean, that's how these battles are designed to play out. So that is what it is. The Russians are doing a good job, I think, of making sure that they kind of encircle our troops. I just have that one armored unit over there that's still cut off. I could have brought it back into supply, but I wanted to take the opportunity I had there to destroy that Russian armored unit before it could potentially reinforce. So we did just wipe out that one tank there on the left flank. Meanwhile, I'm going to probably maintain myself about where we are here on the far left. Still have a somewhat of an effective defensive line. You can see those 2 armored units here on the far left. And then kind of in the center of the map right now, there's another strong Russian front here. We are, damaging it. You can see we just destroyed one of their infantry units there, but they got a lot of artillery in the rear as well. And you just got to be intelligent about where you're attacking and sort of tactical there. We just drove back another Russian infantry unit, so it's kind of like we're driving them back in this center part of the map a little bit on their right flank. Meanwhile, our left flank is basically evaporating. So we're kind of going roundy round in almost like a merry-go-round situation. I've got some self-propelled artillery back there, so it's not like they can completely drive through. Additionally, if they did just bum rush south, then we'd be able to cut them off relatively easily. So they don't want to do that either. Otherwise, they'll end up out of supply. So they kind of have to fight us here, but they also do have, if they kind of wanted to, they could rush a few troops south. And if they could maintain that supply line, they'd be a pretty big threat. I'm hitting spacebar right now. Those numbers represent supply that's being provided. So various cities and towns have different levels of supply, and you can actually run out of supply if a city or town isn't providing enough. Your troops can run out of supply with that red circle, or if they're in supply, if they've got a supply line to the town, but there's not enough to support the units that are there, you can also get that like yellow circle. You can get like a yellow circle on the unit, which represents sort of a limited supply. But overall, right now, our supply situation is actually pretty good as we're concluding the third turn and moving into the fourth. And now we get to watch a large, drawn-out Soviet attack once again, because there's just so many damn Soviet units. And I will say also, I fought out the Donbass battle previously, and even when I was crushing them and almost driving them off the map, it always felt like there were more and more Soviet troops. Like there was never a period where things got a little bit more calm, and we really, even though we had a huge advantage in terms of taking back the majority of the map even from the Soviets, it never really felt like the Soviets were gone. Like it was almost like you were just fighting this never-ending wave of humanity. Even as you were crushing and destroying everything, they always still managed to outnumber you. And not just outnumber you, but, have you feel that superiority that they had. I think this is going to be an interesting battle, though, to see how it plays out, because again, we're going to kind of build this pocket in the center, I think, where we're doing okay there, but I don't have enough to counter them anywhere else. They've got 2 armored units over here, multiple artillery. They got a Katyusha rocket launcher here, 2 more armored units here on the left flank. I'm counting 4 armored units here that they're attacking us with, and hordes of infantry. This battle certainly feels like it's falling into the stereotype of the Russian mass of infantry and whatnot. But the other thing that they're doing now is with this artillery and with just this constant them overwhelming me. As you can see, all of my units here on the left, with the exception of the Neuhauser rockets, are all at least partially suppressed. They've either got the yellow text or they've got the red text. Or the red orangish text represents basically borderline combat ineffective because they're so they've lost so much cohesion. They're suppressed by enemy artillery or just constant combat. The yellow represents sort of a partial loss of cohesion. And then if your number is white, then you're basically fresh and ready to go. We've got quite a few white units in the center there, but the suppressed units on both flanks mean that even the troops I have remaining there are only partially effective. And the Russians, I think, are going to have a relatively easy time dealing with us once they kind of get through and take the time to destroy these units. The one thing I will say is this later stage, while our forces are more deadly, we've got more of them. So this sort of slog, it does. What I'm trying to say is it will take the Russians a little while to fully break through and eliminate these troops. It only takes 1 or 2 units for me to at least delay them a couple of turns, probably. So that gives our troops in the center more time to eliminate the troops they're facing and swing west or east. The one thing I'm kind of worried about, though, here is these armor units and spearheads continue to kind of seemingly forge almost a breakthrough, borderline breaking through on both flanks. I'm kind of worried, I'm going to run into what I ran into last time, where I fight these troops in the center, destroy them, find another line of enemy troops, destroy them, find another line of enemy troops, so that I can never really cut back and attempt to turn in on these attackers and hit them and sort of come to the rescue of my troops on either flank. It just feels like there's another wave of infantry at every point here, and now it seems like they're really massing up here, not just on the right flank, but also kind of in the center right. As you can see, another armor unit moves forward, another tank moves forward. So far, we're holding all of the 3 secondary objectives, holding all of the major objectives. We've destroyed 2 enemy air units. We're making progress, and we're hanging in there, approaching the third, we're a little bit less than a quarter of the way through the battle. But I don't feel terribly optimistic about this one. The last fight, which I know I didn't show on the channel, but the last fight I felt relatively confident the whole way. This one, not so much. We'll see. I just drove back that infantry unit. Our tanks were out of supply. They should be back in supply now. And I'm going to try and see if I can hopefully overwhelm some of these units here. I just drove back that artillery. I'm going to go ahead and attack these tanks to the south, sort of drive through them. We've got one arm. Oh, okay. We just defeated that anti-tank unit. Risking encircling these enemy units over here. Maybe I can destroy these guys with artillery. No, it's not going to work. In any event, they've got a few units here, but they've only got 1 tank unit that's still at full strength. They've got some infantry over there in the right side of the map. But I think I maybe be able to contain these troops here in the center of the map. The troops on the left are going to be a bigger challenge. They're healthier, and I don't really have armor to face them. I've just got infantry. And I don't really have any reserves back here. I do have this 1 armored car. I had some troops that were part of my core that I couldn't deploy because of stacking limits, so I have gone ahead and started to deploy them. One of those is this armored car unit, which we're attacking the enemy with there. We did just drive back that, I'm not sure if it's an artillery piece or an anti-tank gun, whatever it is. We just destroyed it there, so hopefully that puts a little bit of a damper in their attempt to kind of drive on Kiev there. Those armored cars came in real handy, pushing those troops back. Meanwhile, in the center here, our Tigers here did get a little bit overextended in advance of their lines. We'll go ahead and drive them back into supply while they also destroy that Russian unit. We'll attempt to destroy these Katyusha rockets, but I'm going to guess, as usual, we won't. We should have. It said they would lose 6 casualties. They only had 4 units, but we only destroyed 3 of them as they were able to retreat. So, you know, we just got them there. So, again, kind of an armored counterattack, trying to just reduce the enemy troops to our front here. We just surrounded some Soviet troops in the city, destroyed a couple of units there. I'm going to try and... I want to do something with my artillery here. Maybe we'll bombard this town with our artillery, and then maybe we can move some infantry forward to attack it. And then on the right, again, try to mitigate the risk there by suppressing some of their troops. The one thing is, the Soviets have a ton of artillery. The Germans, we really don't. And that's also building priorities as well. I've made some conscious decisions to choose the units I was going to build, and I didn't really build much in the way of artillery. We've got a couple of limited units. The one thing I think that's different, artillery does provide like a support element to your troops when they're attacked, I think. But like in the old Panzer General or even in Panzer Corps, you'd actually see them fire in defense of you if the enemy attacked. I feel like I don't really see that. At least I'm trying to recall. I haven't seen that. Again, it might influence the attack numbers or something like that, but it just doesn't really seem to happen much. Meanwhile, far right flank there, we just eliminated another enemy infantry unit, and I'm just trying to keep these troops in supply, so I'm trying to build sort of a wall of partially wounded troops here on the right flank to get in front of the Soviet armored unit to at least delay them, so they have to keep attacking, and they can't really break through and race to the edge of the map to cut us off. That's the objective anyway. These are move over there against that enemy infantry. We didn't destroy them. I don't know what I want to do with my infantry. These guys are too weak. There's only 2 health there. These heavy infantry can attack these enemy self-propelled guns, these ISUs, so they'll do some damage there. My anti-tank gun I already reinforced, so it can't move, and I'm not going to attack with my standard infantry either, so I guess I'll move over to the edge of the map. Meanwhile, my fighters, I'm looking for Soviet aircraft to destroy. I don't see any of them. It looks like most of them pulled back from the front lines. We have destroyed a couple of them so far. But the only one I see over here is way off to the left, and I can't quite get there. So I'll have to fly my fighters over there. Meanwhile, I'm also going to take my self-propelled anti-aircraft guns and drive them to the left. You know, the anti-air guns are very good in this game at knocking down or at least damaging enemy aircraft, so I'm kind of trying to create a combo team there of anti-air on the ground and 2 fighters to knock out that enemy. I think it's an attack aircraft. It might be a fighter over there on the far left. Meanwhile, again, trying to get troops out in front of this Soviet armor here on the right flank, and I think we're about done with this turn here. Just get these guys out in front, so again, they can't race to the edge of the map, so we can keep a thin cordon of supply coming through. Where to now? I don't want to attack with that. That'll just be asking for trouble. The other thing is if he does race to the right and tries to attack, then he'll expose a supply line to my infantry, which should mean that I'd be able to cut him off if he gets a little bit over-aggressive, and then that might even the odds a little bit here as we move into the 5th turn, and the Soviets continue their onslaught on our positions, and as our position continues to get a little bit more dire. It's a little bit better in the center left. The center is still going well, but the far left and the far right are still in deep shit, really. And even here, the enemy's got a couple of small units that are kind of trying to come in behind us and flank our center, so I don't think our supply line's really all that at risk. It's a pretty wide front at the moment, but you can kind of see them building a little bit of a pocket here, going around our Tigers and our Panzer IVs to kind of get into our rear where we really don't have much to face off against them. So we're going to have to stop driving straight forward unless we want to drive ourselves into a pocket, which we won't escape from. So we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. I'm assuming we've still got a couple more minutes of them attacking us before I really have a good sense of how things are actually going to play out here. It seems like they're shifting their forces away, so we've driven into their line. But again, they're shifting forces on both sides of this little pocket they're creating. It's kind of a neat little pocket they're creating. Fortunately, they don't quite have a roadway yet for them to swing into the center. They'd have to cross this river here, kind of in the center of that map. And it takes a turn for those types of units to cross the map. So we've got at least 2 turns before they can cut our troops. That should be more than enough time for us to pull our Tigers back. Meanwhile, they've brought these Katyushas across the river. Some Russian infantry's attacking, armor's attacking. They're trying to get in and around the town of Akatarka. I need frickin' pronunciation lessons, guys. I'm just not good at it. But just these endless waves of, now you got Soviet engineers. The interesting thing is, you notice when the Katyusha fires, you've got these craters that form in these individual hexes. I don't know if that means like your defenses, if you have like sandbags and things like that, are destroyed. I don't really know what it means, but it's something that certain like heavy artillery or rocket artillery seems to do that regular artillery does not. Those Tigers attacked left there on the right side of the map instead of going to try and cut our troops off, so it should give us another turn with these troops over here on the extreme right flank. But again, they really seem to be doubling down on this kind of attempt to just bypass our tanks and Tigers here in this central pocket. Which is going to be a problem, because if my right flank was intact, then I could kind of pincer these guys. But unfortunately, it's not, and I don't think I've got any real feasible way to do anything except retreat out of that center pocket. We'll see. I want to reduce the troops that are cut off in that town first, but I may have to pull troops back and then reassess. Fortunately, there's no objective there that they're driving on, so and now they're trying to pincer these troops. Now it's not going to work because this armor unit just has to move 1 hex south, and then it's going to be out of the pincer there. They did just destroy that infantry unit there, though. So again, even though we were having some success on this part of the map, they're succeeding in kind of bleeding us down. They just have so many troops, and yeah. I do think that the AI is doing a pretty interesting job, though, in the center there of avoiding the strength of my force and kind of going around them and bypassing them and driving on the objectives anyway. That isn't something I've seen a whole lot of before from the AI. I don't know if it's scripted or not, but I think their main line of attack was going to be down Karsaya Lopan, down that roadway. Fortunately, it looks like the game just gave us some reinforcements. Here in the south, just south of Kharkov. So that should help, I guess. Additionally, it looks like we've got some additional infantry weight, if you will. We've got 5 helmets there that we can deploy new troops. The challenge is I don't have any money for new troops in the Wehrmacht. If they give us additional sort of strength for our SS units, then maybe, but not for the Wehrmacht. I don't have any room left in my troops there. But yeah, I'm kind of struggling with what I want to do here. Trying to finish off some of these weakened Russian units there. Just destroyed 1 infantry unit, destroyed 2 armored units, so pretty successful beginning to our turn here. Meanwhile, I don't think I'm going to be strong enough to attack their infantry, but at least that threat of a breakthrough here in the center of this part of the map is over. They've still got 2 armored units and 3 infantry units and a Katyusha that I can see all over here near Akatarka. My hope was I could use these anti-tank guns against these ISUs, but and they did just fire in support, so that was good. We just drove them back. We didn't destroy them, but we at least drove them back, and then we're going to use what limited points I have here to reinforce the troops on the left. Now that means I won't have any left for troops anywhere else on the map, which again, the right flank really could use some reinforcements as well. But I guess it is what it is. But I think that's probably going to wrap things up here, guys. I'm going to try and finish off these troops in this town, and we'll see that we succeeded there. I'll pull these tanks back to kind of help prevent getting pincered. But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here in just a moment or so. I'm going to keep driving with my Tigers here into this trap, I guess. I'll actually pull this Tiger south. I don't know why that one Tiger I just advanced. Hell, you know, the hell with being flanked. We're driving straight ahead. I think I'm going to pull these other guys, at least one of these other guys, back to try and mitigate this. I don't have any good attack angles on any of these Russian troops over here on the flank. Most of them are in woods, which are going to be a challenge for us to do much with. I was just trying to destroy that armored unit that we pushed back. But yeah, anyway, trying to reassess, sort of realign my forces. I'll sacrifice those objective cities to the right flank if I can kind of reestablish a new front line against these guys breaking through. And I think that's maybe what we'll have to do if we do another video or not, I'm not sure. I did want to just show you guys this Endsieg DLC. So yesterday was sort of our first impressions video. This one was a little bit more just of the actual fighting and less about the campaign itself. But I think this makes for a good stopping point here. We're 5 turns in, just finishing up our own turn here, and you know, things are kind of dire. It's a very fluid situation at the moment. We'll see how things are going. In the center, they were almost going too good, and I'm kind of having to redeploy. In the right and left flank, we're hanging on by the skin of our teeth, but things are somewhat crumbling, I guess. Oh, goodness, we just destroyed that infantry unit. But that's the situation. Just shy of a third of the way through the battle. We haven't lost an objective yet, but we've certainly lost some units, and we've certainly been bled white and don't have any money left for reinforcements. So that doesn't bode well for us. I'm sure the Soviets have more and more men. It certainly feels like it. However, with that being said, that's going to do it for today's episode. Until next time, guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.